are halfway through the NFL season, and you'd think that we would have a better idea of what's going on in the NFL season in terms of our picks, but I feel I'm flying just about as blind as I did at the start of the season, but it doesn't mean we're not going to make our weekly picks for Week 10 here in this video. But before we get into the video, I wanted to take a second and ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. Really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel as we release multiple NFL-related videos every Thursday and Saturday all year long. Now, let's get back to the video. So starting out, we're going to look at our last week's picks as we always do. And you might think 9-6 isn't that bad. In most weeks, this would be a solid, if not great record. But this is absolutely putrid for week 9. And the only reason it's putrid is because Vegas went 14-1. Literally, you would go 14-1 if you just picked straight favorites. I went 0 for 5 on my upset picks. I had the Jets beating the Texans, wrong. Patriots beating the Titans, wrong. Browns beating the Chargers, wrong. Cowboys beating the Falcons, wrong. Bears beating the Cardinals, wrong. And the only other one I got wrong, I'm pretty sure everyone got wrong, it's the fact that the Panthers ended up beating the Saints. And I think as long as most people had the Saints winning that game, but c'est la vie, Panthers got to win. Saints are terrible. We talked about that in our power ranking video. But either way, this is not a good record for week 9. I am significantly behind Vegas now. And I did this last year. There was one week I decided I'm going to get a little loose with my upset picks. And that was the week that Vegas was 100% right. 2 straight years I've done this. Maybe I should just lock that in the steel trap. I can't be picking 5 upsets in a week. And so we have a few less upsets this week. But again, I still pick these picks blindly of who's expected to win. I pick just based on who I actually think will win and then figure out how Vegas performs after the fact. And so moving on to this week's picks, we start with our Sunday morning Munich game. We have the New York Giants visiting the Carolina Panthers. And my German fans, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that the NFL goes to Munich and says, we're going to send the Giants and the Panthers. Let me be clear. This is somehow better than it was at the start of the season because the New York Giants are better than we expected them to be, and the Panthers are about the same as we expected them to be. And the fact that this game sucks as much as it does, and we still look at it as better than it was coming into the season, shows how much the NFL does not apparently give a flying rat's ass about the Munich game. So again, German fans, from the bottom of my heart, I am sorry. Quickly getting into this matchup, I don't want to spend too long talking about it, but the Panthers are not really a home team because, again, it is in Munich. There is no home field advantage outside of stadium in the NFL for the most part. And so without it being a home field advantage for the Panthers, at least the Giants, I feel, can do something. Tyrone Tracy is a good running back. They have good receivers in Malik Neighbors, and Wan'Dale Robinson's not too bad. The Panthers, on the other hand, it's likely they're still going to be starting Bryce Young. Andy Dalton was significantly better for them. They traded away Deontay Johnson. The Panthers, I just don't see how they win any games remaining. The only way the Panthers would have a chance in this game is if they were at home, but they're not at home. They're in Munich. Neither team is at home, and so I'm taking the New York Giants to win this game. This is a crapshoot of a game. Both these teams are bad. Yes, jet lag and travel and how teams recover from that could play a factor, but again, there's no advantage to either team, and the Giants are clearly the better football team, even if they are not that good. Next up, we have the New England Patriots visiting the Chicago Bears, and the Patriots, much like the Panthers, are one of the worst teams in the NFL. I mean, they literally just lost the Tennessee Titans, for crying out loud. Yeah, it might have been in overtime when Drake May scored at end of regulation to put it into overtime, but they still lost to the Titans. This is not a team I put much stock in at all. Yeah, okay, they got some wins earlier in the season. They did beat the Bengals. That was solid, but this is not a good football club. On the flip side, the Chicago Bears are in a little bit of a valley in their season right now. They were just basically a play away from going 5-2, and they're now 4-4, but they're still a solid football club. I'm not sure how Caleb Williams is going to perform in this game, but I don't even think Caleb Williams needs to ball out for the Bears to win this game at home in Soldier Field, and because of that, I'm going with the Bears. Because no matter how Caleb Williams does, I just think the Bears at home win this football game. Following that, we have the Buffalo Bills visiting the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts are definitely a better team with Joe Flacco at quarterback than Anthony Richardson at quarterback. This team is competent. They can drive the ball for the most part. Yeah, they only put up 13 against the Minnesota Vikings, but we all know the Minnesota Vikings defense is legit. They have shut down some very good teams. I mean, I think they held the Houston Texans to what, like 6 points or something like that? The Indianapolis Colts are a good team, and I think they should be able to put up points on the Buffalo Bills. But the same can be said for the Buffalo Bills being able to put up points against the Indianapolis Colts. The Buffalo Bills have all the weapons you need on offense. Amari Cooper should be fully integrated into the offense pretty soon. You still got Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman. You got James Cook and Ray Davis. Josh Allen is one of the MVP candidates for a reason, and he's still Josh Allen. And so even though this game is in Indianapolis, and I think there is an advantage to it being home field, and Joe Flacco is an improvement over Anthony Richardson, this is still a game I'm picking for the Buffalo Bills. They are just enough better than the Indianapolis Colts that I don't think home field advantage is going to come into play, and the Bills should be able to ride this game to an 8-2 record on the season, which, pretty damn impressive. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings visiting the Jacksonville Jaguars. And while this game might be in Jacksonville really hasn't had much to say about quality football at all this season. Their offense has been middling at best. They lost Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr. still recovering from an injury. The running back room with Etienne and Bigsby and Foreman, etc., is mediocre at best. It's a timeshare where nobody's getting any good time in it. Whereas on the flip side, the Minnesota Vikings have Sam Darnold, Aaron Jones, Cam Akers is looking solid, at least as of the last game they played in. They got in the receiving game Hawkinson back, Addison's back as well, and Justin Jefferson still doing Justin Jefferson things. The Minnesota Vikings are really good both offensively and defensively, where we saw last week they were able to shut down Joe Flacco and the Indianapolis Colts pretty effectively. This is a really good football team. They have beat some good football teams this season too, including the Green Bay Packers and the Houston Texans, as well as barely losing to the Detroit Lions on a last-second field goal. The Vikings are good. The Jaguars are bad, so I don't care that this game is in Jacksonville. I'm picking the Minnesota Vikings to walk away with this game and move to 7-2 on the season, which is probably more wins than I had chalked them up to have on the season in general. And they'll have it through only 9 weeks. Following that, we have a divisional matchup between the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs. And Denver is a significantly improved team over what we expected from them this season. I cannot say that enough. And I also cannot say enough that Bo Nix is a good rookie quarterback. I know the first 2 weeks weren't that great. We all made the nickname Bo Picks, and I think a lot of people have that stuck in their mind. I have talked to plenty of people who still think Bo Nix is terrible because of what we saw in those early weeks and the fact that people just aren't watching Broncos games. But that is a bad narrative. Bo Nix is a good quarterback, but I don't think he's a good quarterback this week. And that's because the Denver Broncos are going on the road to play against the Kansas City Chiefs, who sport one of the best defenses in football. To be clear, Bo Nix is still a good quarterback, but a rookie quarterback going on the road against a divisional rival when he doesn't have many weapons on the offense to begin with, and that team they're visiting has one of, if not the best defenses in football, yeah, almost any rookie quarterback is going to have a bad game. I mean, even look at CJ Stroud. He is clearly a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. When that man goes on the road against a good defense, he doesn't perform. That is historically the case for CJ Stroud because it takes time to get used to playing on the road against good, effective defenses. It is not easy. You can be a great quarterback and still struggle with that. And I think that is the case for Bo Nix. So while he's still a good quarterback, I don't expect a great game out of him here. I think it's going to be a fairly low-scoring contest because the Broncos do have a good defense on their side of the field, and the Kansas City Chiefs seem to be more than happy to play low-scoring defensive contests. I have them winning this game, and myself and Vegas have this as the lock of the week, primarily because, again, Bo Nix is a rookie quarterback going into Kansas City. I'm not going to give him that much of a shot, even though I still think he's good, but Kansas City wins this game. It should be fairly low-scoring, but they'll pull it off. Following that, we have another divisional matchup, and this is one of the deepest rivalries in the NFL. The Atlanta Falcons going on the road to visit the New Orleans Saints. If you think, as a fan of an NFL team, that you hate another team, you do not know hatred. That is the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints. A quick history lesson. These two teams were bad for like the first 30 years of their existence. The Falcons were bad. The Saints were bad. It wasn't until like the late 90s and into the 2000s that these teams started to become competent franchises. And with them being incompetent franchises, and two of the few franchises that were placed in the South at the time in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, because that was when college football still controlled the South and there wasn't that many Southern teams. Like, you didn't really have teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Houston Texans, etc. at the time. And because of that, these two teams hated each other, and their games were all that mattered because they knew they weren't winning Super Bowls. They just wanted to beat each other. And so this is always a fun matchup when it comes up on the schedule. I know that the Saints aren't very good and the Falcons are pretty good this year, but this is still going to be fun. And the fans in New Orleans, oh man, are they going to make it difficult on Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. That being said, I do think that Cousins is enough of a veteran and the Falcons are a good enough team that they will pull off the win in this game, if only because the New Orleans Saints are basically going to have all backups in outside of Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara on their offense. They have lost 7 in a row. They have a new head coach, and there's just not a lot positive to say about the New Orleans Saints, whereas the Falcons are moving in the right direction. So I think they'll be able to overcome the hostile environment of New Orleans and win this football game. Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers going on the road to visit the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And man, do I feel for the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers lost Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And what do they have to show for it? Well, they get matchups against both teams that went to the Super Bowl last year in back-to-back weeks during this time. Last week, they lost in overtime on the road to the Kansas City Chiefs. Vegas had that as the lock of the week. And I mean, Tampa Bay, if they just went for 2 at the end of that game, I think could have won that football game or should have won that football game. I think it was a cowardly decision by Todd Bowles. I did not like it at all. It pissed me off. Anyone who was watching on stream knows how mad I was at that decision, but the decision happened. The Buccaneers lost, and they are now on the outside looking in of the playoff picture. They are well behind the Atlanta Falcons, who have won multiple games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the season. And given there are some really good wildcard teams out there right now, like the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Philadelphia Eagles, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to need to get some wins if they want to make the playoffs. And the exact same thing can be said for the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are 4-4 on the season, way below what we all expected from the 49ers coming into this season. Yes, they still have a good shot at playoffs, if only because there is nobody that's running away with the NFC West. But much like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 49ers are in dire straits and needing to win football games. These are two teams that I think absolutely have the capability of making the playoffs, but they're going to need to start winning and start winning now if they're going to overcome the hole that they dug themselves early on in this season. In terms of who I'm picking in this game, I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers. I feel so sorry for Buccaneers fans because this Buccaneers team is actually pretty good, and Baker Mayfield is so good this year, yet somehow they're going to end up with a worse record than they did last year, which is really weird to say. But I just think the 49ers are too talented. They're getting Christian McCaffrey back. They're coming off a bye week as opposed to the Buccaneers, who have a little bit of a shorter week coming off a Monday Night Football game with the Chiefs. And with the Buccaneers still missing Godwin, still missing Evans, we don't know if a guy like Jalen McMillan's going to be back. And the 49ers having a full week to rest and prepare for this game. Even though they're going on the road, I expect them to be able to win this. And I mean, let's be honest, the 49ers are just the more talented team. And I think talent will win out when their back is against the wall and they'll pull off this football game. Next up, we have an AFC-NFC clash. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going on the road to visit the Washington Commanders. This is a 6-2 team versus a 7-2 team. This is a really good football game. We have a really good defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers going against a really good offense in the Washington Commanders. And the fun part about this is the Commanders' defense leaves a fair bit to be desired, and the Steelers' offense leaves a fair bit to be desired. So they seem almost evenly matched on both sides of the football in terms of what's going to be good. I think watching this Steelers defense against this Commanders offense is going to tell you a lot about the long-term expectations of these two teams. If the Steelers defense can stop this Washington Commanders offense, then this team needs to be considered absolutely legit. Because if they're able to shut down the Washington Commanders offense, that means they can shut down a lot of offenses in the NFL. And the Steelers offense is good enough to win those low-scoring games that their defense controls. On the flip side, if the Washington Commanders can overcome the Steelers defense, then the Commanders offense is legit, and they've proven that they can put up points on just about everybody. And so it doesn't matter so much that their defense is a little bit mid. And they've added Marshawn Lattimore to it too. That can't be overlooked. It just matters that the Commanders can stay in every game because they can score points against any defense. So that's going to be a matchup I am very much looking forward to. I have these teams at number 6 and number 7 on my power rankings, with the Commanders being a little bit behind the Steelers on my power rankings, but the Commanders are the home team in this game. And as such, Vegas has the Commanders as the favorite. But I'm going to go a little bit against it. I'm going to go with the Steelers winning this game. They're coming off the bye week. That can't be overlooked. The Steelers are a really good football team. I think that Russell Wilson being more integrated into this offense with a full bye week of preparation will absolutely help them. And I think Mike Williams will be a great counterpiece to George Pickens, who will take away some defensive schemes from Pickens, but Pickens is still going to be the number one. I think the Steelers will just figure out a way to win this football game, and it's nothing against the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. I'm just going with the experience and the savvy of the Pittsburgh Steelers over the youth and excitement of the Commanders for this one game. Following that, we're back to a bit of a crapshoot of a game again. We got the Tennessee Titans visiting the Los Angeles Chargers. The Tennessee Titans are one of the worst teams in football. I mean, they barely beat the New England Patriots in overtime at home last week, a week after they got absolutely decimated by the Detroit Lions, where the Lions threw for less than 100 yards and still put up over 50 points on this team, who apparently their calling card was their defense. And this week, the Titans are going on the road to the LA Chargers, who are actually a pretty good football team. They have a winning record. They're 5-3. Justin Herbert is starting to throw the ball around the field. Last week, we actually saw the passing game and the running game work fairly well in tandem with each other. And so, with the Chargers at home in this game against a putrid Titans team, I don't care if it's Rudolph or Levis starting. It's the Chargers winning this game. I don't even care that the Chargers don't really have a home field advantage because there are no Chargers fans. They're still winning. Let's move on. Next up, we have the New York Jets visiting the Arizona Cardinals, and the Jets got a nice win on Thursday Night Football at home against the Tennessee Titans last week. That definitely got them back into the win column. That was needed because a lot of people were looking very, very down on the New York Jets, myself included. I was shocked when the Jets were favored in that game, but, hey, apparently Vegas knew what they were doing calling them against the Texans. I thought the Texans would take that game, but hey, I'll acknowledge when I'm wrong. On the flip side, you have the Arizona Cardinals, who have won quite a few games in a row and are still on top in the NFC West. I'm starting to think that my early season prediction and bullish nature of the Arizona Cardinals might actually be accurate. I was moving away from that stance after a few weeks into the season, but seeing how the Cardinals have played lately, they are showing the version of the team that I expected them to be in 2024 when I was looking at them as one of my breakout teams that could fight for a playoff spot. I acknowledge there is a good chance they don't make the playoffs, if only because there are 3 really good wildcard teams in the NFC, and I think the only way that the Arizona Cardinals make the playoffs is if they win the division, which means knocking the 49ers out of the playoffs, which I just can't wrap my head around at this point in the season. So I don't think the Cardinals will make the playoffs, but I expect them to be frisky until basically the end of the season. In terms of who wins this game, the New York Jets are favored in this game on the road, which, I mean, how? I don't understand how they were favored last week, and they were and they won, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just way too bearish on the New York Jets, but in Arizona, with how the Cardinals have been playing lately and how inconsistent the Jets are, how can I not take the Arizona Cardinals to pull off the upset in this game? I was very surprised to learn that the Jets were favored, and this is an upset pick I really, really like this week. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong again on the Jets. It's totally possible. But for this week, and this week only, I'm picking the Cardinals to cover an upset. Next up, we have our final non-primetime game of Week 10 and an absolute divisional rivalry. We have the Philadelphia Eagles visiting the Dallas Cowboys. And if you had told me a week ago that this was going to be a game coming up in Week 10, I would have been salivating. The Philadelphia Eagles had been quite good, but we're still in the wild card. And the Dallas Cowboys were getting a little bit of an easier schedule coming up while they had some struggles. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb have always balled out on the Philadelphia Eagles just every year they've ever played them in recent memory. The problem is, against the Falcons, Dak Prescott got himself injured, and he's not going to be playing quarterback in this game. And if there's no Dak Prescott, there's no chance for the Cowboys, and the Eagles should be able to walk away with this game pretty easily. They are nearly the biggest favorite per Vegas, even though they're on the road in a divisional rivalry game. And you almost never see that from Vegas, but they understand what I understand, what we all understand, and that's that Cooper Rush is not a good enough quarterback to lead a Micah Parsons-less Cowboys team over a Philadelphia Eagles team that will happily just hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley 30 to 40 times a game to lock this one up. So I don't care if A.J. Brown's missing or anything else about the Eagles. If Saquon's there, the Eagles win this game, and we can move along. Moving into our Sunday Night Football matchup, we have a fantastic Sunday Night Football matchup. This is actually a really good week of primetime games, starting out with the Bengals and the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. You, the viewer, already know what happened in that game. Hopefully it was good. I, at the time of filming, do not yet know what happened in that game, but it's at least expected to be a good game, and hopefully you agreed that it was a good game. But alongside that, we have the Lions and Texans here on Sunday Night Football, another absolute banger of a primetime football game. The Texans at home taking on the Lions. The Texans, 2 of their 3 losses have come against NFC North teams. Yeah, they were able to beat the Chicago Bears, but they lost by a lot to the Minnesota Vikings, and they lost to the Green Bay Packers, and they might in this game lose 3 to the NFC North while only having 1 loss outside the NFC North. And I mean, if that doesn't tell you how good the NFC North is and how bad the AFC South is, I don't know what does. The big question for the Houston Texans in this game is going to be Nico Collins' health. Is he healthy? Is he going to play in this football game? If he does, that's a massive boon for the Houston Texans, because now they'll have him and Tank Dell, as well as Dalton Schultz and Joe Mixon, who can all do what they need to do on the football field and force the Detroit Lions to cover a bunch of guys. But if the Lions really just need to worry about Tank Dell, I think their pass defense will do enough that they can just focus exclusively on the run defense with Joe Mixon, shut him down, and win this game easily. Nico Collins opens up this game as a really good contest, especially being at home in Houston, but I'm still going to take the Detroit Lions to win either way. The Lions have just looked so good, and even if the Houston Texans offense can score a number of points on the Lions can probably do the same thing to the Houston Texans defense, similarly to what the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings have done against this Houston Texans defense. And so I just think that the Detroit Lions will be able to pull this one off either way. However, if Nico Collins is there, it might be a bit of a closer contest. And our final game of the week, we got the Miami Dolphins visiting the LA Rams, 2 teams that were incredibly injured early on in the season, but have gotten a bit healthier, and this should actually be a decent football game. If you gave us this football game in like week 5, I would literally be droning about how awful this is going to be. But Tua is back for the Dolphins. They actually look like a competent football team. The Rams have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back, which makes them a much more competent offense as well. And so this should actually be a decent football game. Now, let's be clear. The Dolphins are not making the playoffs. They are too far behind the 8 ball to have any chance of coming back in the AFC. That's my opinion. Yes, if they go and win basically every game remaining on the season, they could probably get into a wild card spot. But that is so unlikely for the Miami Dolphins that I just think this is a lost season for them, and they're going to have to come back next year and hope that guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey are still effective in 2025. On the flip side for the Rams, much like what I talked about with the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers, the NFC West is incredibly tight. And it means, in spite of how many good wildcard teams there are in the NFC, really it's just 3, but they're all significantly ahead of anybody else in the wildcard race halfway through the season, the Rams still have a shot at the playoffs because the NFC West is still so wide open and so close. Now, the Rams need to win this football game to make it happen. I think all of the Rams, the 49ers, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks, once they're off from bye, are in must-win territory. Because of how tight these teams are, you expect that one of them will go on a run. And so if you're the team that doesn't go on a run, or a team that doesn't go on a run, you're not going to have a chance at the playoffs. And so you need to be winning games now. And so this is a must-win game for the Rams. They are at home. And even though the Dolphins definitely look like a much improved unit, they've still lost both games since Tua has been back. And I think they're going to make it 3 losses in a row with Tua as the starting quarterback, lose this football game, and I have the Rams pulling off the win in this one. And so that's it for my picks. You can see a summary of my picks here. We have 4 teams on byes, only 14 games this week. I only picked the 2 upsets this week, those being the Steelers beating the Commanders and the Cardinals beating the Jets. I got a little bit fast and loose last week, and it bit me in the ass. As you can see here, Vegas went 14-1. They are so far ahead of me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch up, But if I am, it's going to be slow and it's going to be steady. And hopefully by the end of the season, I'm at least close to Vegas's picks. I don't mind being slightly behind because, again, picking upsets, you're going to lose more often than you win. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to keep picking upsets because it's just more fun. But that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, remember to leave a like and comment down below. Help us out, help us grow. I hope you enjoy Week 10 of the NFL season, and I'll see you all in Week 11 for our power rankings and pick'ems then. Peace!